Hello, welcome to another reading of Curtis Jones' writing, presented here on YouTube. Uh, this is my website, uh, and I'm not really sure how long it's going to be available, but for now it's available. Curtis-Jones-Books.squarespace.com. I also have a web presence on Facebook at Curtis Jones Author Page on Facebook, and you could go to either one of those. They've got details of each of the books I've written, and you can find out a little about each book. I've got 14 books that are published there now, or published on Amazon. You could also go to Amazon.com, author Curtis Jones, and it'll list mine and some other people named Curtis Jones's books. But I suggest you look at these two first so you get the correct Curtis Jones. This presentation is Chapter 7, and it is entitled Be Careful, Little Ears. So let me get started with reading. The Be Careful, Little Ears. I had not been married very long when I had to take my bride and move into an 8 by 40 mobile home that was parked next door to Mom and Dad's house. I was unemployed and feeling sorry for myself. My wife was just happy that we were together. I had lots of time to wander around the orchard next door to the house. I was talking to God and asking if He could change my situation. On this day, I wandered over near the neighbor's property, and he was also walking around his place. When we came together, we began to talk. After the niceties, he asked how long I was, or how I was doing, and I was sure he thought he had opened a floodgate of complaints. He listened with great patience until I stopped talking. He said that was a tough break and that he understood how I felt. He asked if I had time for a short story that might give some perspective to what was going on. I agreed. I had nothing but time, and so a little delay didn't really matter how long the story was. This old gentleman was James McMillan. I made up the last name because all I remembered was his first name, but I'll call him James McMillan. And he had seen, or seemed to be, a kind gentleman and completely harmless. He was a gray-haired man, and he looked a little frail. He was about 5'6" and looked as though time had robbed him of several inches of his height. The muscles in his arms were fairly defined, and his bones were easily visible. His voice was shaky and cracked every once in a while. He looked as though he had weathered some hard times in his life. His face was, and his hands uh, carried deep lines, as if they were, or as if he had been through hardships and it had taken a heavy toll on him. This tale began with the introduction of his long lost friend. Mike and John were best friends with him when he married a beautiful girl a long time ago. He and his two friends met every Saturday night to have a few beers and play matchstick poker. These meetings continued even after his marriage. It was shortly after World War II, and there was little money to be had, so entertainment was something done at home. Jane said that as they were sipping on their beer, they spoke of the evening, they spoke of the events of the week, the politics of the day, and their hopes in life. He said that was the week that the evil seed was planted in their lives. It had been a hard week for them all. Once, when they had not earned enough money to meet their obligations for the week, and everyone was a little downhearted. James said, as we played cards, Mike said, I wish we could play with real money instead of these silly little old matchsticks. John responded with that we would need to rob a bank or do something like that. And we all laughed at it, he said. He said, I didn't give that statement another thought. But the next week, we gathered for our regular game, and somewhere in the evening, the conversation came to the statement made about robbing the bank again. And we began to talk about it, how it would have to be done, and how we could do it. We all had a good chuckle about the whole thing. The next week, when we came together, John moved the conversation into the more serious look at what it would take to rob a bank. He said, those who get caught with the one, he said, those who get caught with the one true robbed, the ones, let me say that again. He said, those who get caught were the ones who truly robbed banks, and the place they learned their methods, and that is how they get caught. He said, we could rob one bank and get away with it. We each thought about it all that week. We began to believe we could do it, and so we made plans and spent most of the next Saturday evening talking about robbing a bank. James said that they were nervous and excited at the time, each one in his own way. The plans were finalized, and all that remained was to decide which bank. As James told the story, it looked like a sad story to me. He had tears well up in his eyes. He continued, we settled upon a small bank in a town 25 miles from where we lived. We stole a car one night in a neighboring town, and we parked my pickup 3 blocks from the bank as a getaway car that is to say, the stolen car, would be the only car that they would be looking for after the robbery was set for the next Saturday in the morning, when the town would be having a parade. I told my lovely wife that we were going fishing, James said. Now, it's true that the expected can stop any, or the unexpected can stop any plan without notice and can change everything in an instant. All went well in the bank, but when we came to the out to police cruiser with two officers in it, and each was parked right across the street from the bank. As we exited the building, the alarm sounded, and the officers saw our guns and opened fire. So John was dead. Mike was shot, and I fell to the ground and gave up. I spent the next 35 years in San Quentin prison, he told me. I lost my beautiful wife. My friend John was dead, and I never saw Mike again after the trial. I don't even know what has become of him, he told me. I learned that the seeds of little boxes those 2 weeks ago could have produced unwanted fruits that can change the course of your life. He said, I wanted to warn you that you must remember what you learned in Bible school, a beautiful story that would have helped me all those years ago had I but remembered. And he said, be careful, little mouth, what you say. Be careful, little ears, what you hear. Be careful, little eyes, what you see. Be careful, little feet, where you go. Be careful, little hands, what you do. He said, always remember these important lessons that you once knew. I wished I had remembered. We said our goodbyes and went away when I thought about what he had said and realized he was probably right. How we let little things that come our way make very big changes in our lives. That evening, when my wife and I retired, I told her what was going on in my head, and we decided to go where the work was. We made our preparations and headed from California to Kansas, where my favorite uncle lived. He had offered to help us with a fresh new start. We made the change and we learned to depend upon each other to find a balance for the difficulties that often come our way. And a simple reminder at the end of this story, remember, be mindful of what you say. I hope you've enjoyed this story. That was chapter 7. I'll do chapter 8 the next time I do a presentation. Uh, I think this book has 11 chapters. I'm not sure. Let me check. Yeah, 11 chapters. And these are stories that have family history as well as things I could not put into my other books because I'd written them and there was no way to insert them, I didn't think. But I hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, may God bless and keep you. And remember those Bible lessons we learned so long ago. They weren't just for children, they're for adults too. God bless you and take care until next time. Bye bye.